Starting off Prime 5 with all the latest in Bangladesh, there seems to be no end to massive demonstrations in the streets of Bangladesh. Days after the death of prominent Bangladeshi youth leader Sharif Usman bin Hadi, which triggered widespread unrest and demonstrations in the country, another leader was shot at. Meanwhile, former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has slammed the Yunus regime and said that the lawlessness in Dhaka has multiplied under the interim government led by Mohammed Yunus. Now, the second student leader who was shot in head, his name is Mohammed Mutalib Sikdar, and he was shot in head at the Khulna divisional chief of the Bangladesh National Citizen Party. So he's an NCP leader there in Dhaka. He has been shot at the head and he has been taken to Khulna Medical College Hospital in critical condition right now. Meanwhile, in an email interview with news agency ANI, Hasina has slammed the interim government for its failure to maintain peace in Bangladesh. She has strongly criticized the Yunus regime. Hasina has said that violence has become the new norm in Dhaka, and the interim government headed by Mohammed Yunus is either in denial or powerless to stop all that is happening in Bangladesh. Let's now take you through the latest as Bangladesh remains on turmoil. But before we tell you that, let's cut across live to my colleague Saurabh. Saurabh, it seems like lawlessness has multiplied under the Yunus-led interim government in Bangladesh after a second radical student leader being shot in head.
That's right. This, of course, was an incident that was reported this morning from Khulna, which, of course, is far away from Dhaka. But again, this highlights the law and order situation in the country where extremists have been running amok. And, of course, the law and order situation ahead of elections scheduled in February seems to be questionable, to say the least. And whether it's fit for elections or not is something that, again, is being asked, given that there are forces that want to destabilize Bangladesh ahead of elections. Now, Chief Advisor of the interim government, Mohammed Yunus, who's basically equivalent to the Prime Minister in an elected government. Remember, Yunus is not elected currently. He has held a meeting today on the issue of law and order. In fact, he's held a meeting with all his advisors to try and find a solution to this ongoing violence that has also seen minorities being targeted. It was, the murder, the brutal barbarity of the attack on Deepu Chandra Das, who was pulled out of a garment factory and then, of course, publicly lynched in a brutal fashion. All of that has also drawn attention to what's going on in Bangladesh, which is emboldening of radical Islam forces, a complete breakdown of the law and order situation, and the Yunus government seemingly not in control of the situation.
Right, Saurabh, just to add to that, people are not just being targeted. It's not just minorities being targeted in Bangladesh, but also media top dailies like Daily Star and Pratham, all who are being targeted and their offices being vandalized. How perhaps do you see the situation panning out in the future? Because it seems like Bangladesh at this point of time has descended into chaos. Second radical leader being attacked, anti-India demonstrations, and it also seems like that Dhaka right now is peddling an anti-India narrative as well.
Absolutely. And Mohammed Yunus, since becoming the chief advisor of the interim government, has taken decisions that can be directly traced to what's happening in Bangladesh today. For example, one of the radical Islam forces, a pro-Pakistan organization, is the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. Now, the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh was banned under the Sheikh Hasina government. What did Mohammed Yunus do? He comes to power and he, of course, overturns that ban, emboldening them, facilitating their return to mainstream politics by also ensuring that they get their registration back to contest elections. Now, the Jamaat-e-Islami is not prepared at this point to fight elections. It does not have the organization in terms of electoral machinery, and which is why many believe that the Jamaat does not want elections at this point, and it suits Mohammed Yunus as well, because if there are no elections, then he can continue in power without being elected. That's one. Now, as the Jamaat becomes stronger, its targets are very clear. One, of course, it follows a clearly pro-Pakistan formula. It has attacked institutions like Chayanot, and radical forces have attacked institutions like Chayanot and Udichi Shilpi Goshti. Newspaper offices like Prothom Alo and Daily Star, newspaper editors have been attacked, and minorities, of course.
Right. Right, Saurabh, thanks for getting us the latest on this. We'll, of course, be tracking the story very closely with you. All right, staying on with all that's happening in Bangladesh, let's now tell you how New Delhi has rejected and hit back what it called misleading propaganda in various sections of the Bangladeshi media. Those are the visuals on your screens right now as to the anti-India narrative which is being peddled by Dhaka right now. That is over a protest that took place outside the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi. On your left side of your screens right now is a visual of what is happening in Delhi. The hardly 20 to 25 people outside the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi. On the contrary, a sea of demonstrators demonstrating, protesting, raising slogans outside the Indian High Commission in Chittagong there. And the protest in Delhi, which took place outside the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi, it happened following the killing of Deepu Chandra Das. Well, to talk more on the anti-India narrative being peddled by Dhaka, I'm being joined by my colleague Shiv Arur. Shiv, what do you make of this anti-India narrative which is now being peddled by Bangladesh after, of course, a slew of anti-India protests taking place in Dhaka?
Well, Rahesha, you know, those two pictures that you had up on your screen just a moment ago, and we'll put those back on our screen, shows you that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bangladesh has extremely low credibility. It's become a bit of a laughing stock because they've issued a statement condemning the protest that happened outside the Bangladesh High Commission in Delhi. That's the image on the left. You can see 5 or 6 people, whereas the Bangladesh government said that these people scaled the wall and breached the integrity of the High Commission, which is incredibly untrue, as can be proven by these images. On the other hand, you can see images from outside the Indian consulate in Chittagong, which is a big Bangladesh city. You've got a huge unruly mob, not only threatening Indian officials, but literally damaging property, issuing death threats, calling for officials to come out and face mob justice, issuing specific threats against Indian members of the mission, etc. There's no comparison between the two. The Ministry of External Affairs here in India has issued a statement saying that the sovereignty and integrity of all foreign missions is of utmost importance and security will always be provided, and that after a few minutes of the protest in Delhi, those protesters were actually dispersed by the police. Whereas in Bangladesh, which is rapidly descending into an Islamist terror hub for radicalization, issuance of death threats, lynching of minorities, and complete lack of law and order, over a year after the so-called revolution that overthrew Sheikh Hasina, the world can see very clearly where things actually stand. India doesn't need to fact check Bangladesh, but the anti-India narrative over there is very contrived. It is very fabricated. It is required to keep, mindless Gen Z mobs in control in some manner or the other. And that's the reason why it's happening. Nobody with any credibility buys that narrative.
Right, Shiv. My last question to you. What are India's options right now with one of its closest neighbors behaving in such an unruly manner, with anti-India demonstrations taking place, and of course, anti-India narrative being peddled by leading media houses there in Dhaka?
Well, Rahesha, the reason why India's options become important is because you've got 2 big states bordering Bangladesh that go to the elections in the next few weeks and months. You've got Assam, you've got Bengal, you've got an issue that is rapidly descending into chaos. These are porous borders that exist between India and Bangladesh. This is a country that is hosting Pakistani military delegations. This is a country where the ISI is able to manipulate things and, conduct possible political assassinations in order to try and implicate India as well. So India's options, are, I believe, across the spectrum, whether they are diplomatic, whether they are people to people, whether they are government to government, possibly, in the military spectrum, there could be some options as well. Who knows where things could actually go. At this point of time, things are very, very open. India has always been considered a big brother to Bangladesh. It's a country that has, has a legacy and a relationship with the birth of Bangladesh as well. And that's the reason why things are a little complicated now, because the cultural ties between India and Bangladesh are actually very deep. People-to-people contacts are very deep. But these Islamist mobs that have been normalized by Mohammad Yunus and the and the ecosystem that supports them within Bangladesh, within Pakistan, possibly within China as well, is what India needs to look at very closely.
Right. Absolutely, Shiv. Thanks for sharing your insights on this.